Today, I am so excited to have. I guess you're a band leader. Is that your? What do you? It's Kevin Clark.
Yeah,
But like
you, Kevin.
when I put your super up here, with your name and that, what am I going to put on? Band leader.
Trumpeter, band leader.
Trumpeter, band leader. You've played
produced albums too. But
musician.
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 Yeah.
Musician
Music.
Kevin Clark. There you
Yeah.
go. And so, because you've done a couple of cool things recently, and definitely one of the reasons I want to bring you on here, because this is so interesting. You were on The Simpsons.
Yeah, that's the most recent thing that happened. It happened.
How does one make it on The Simpsons? Because it's an animated show.
I don't know. I mean, I was excited about it. It ties in with David Silverman, who's an animator for The Simpsons, and
Okay.
And he's good friends with Matt Prine, who's a sousaphone player with the New Orleans Nightcrawlers.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, okay. And you're in the New Orleans Nightcrawlers.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
co-founder of that group. We started it decades ago, and we have several albums out, and so they approached, I guess, Matt about using a couple of tracks for the show, and then I got excited because he said they may animate some of us, and I'm like, well, I want to be animated. I'd rather. That's like a great honor, because like we're always like clawing away at trying to get like a Grammy nomination, a Grammy award, and I got a Grammy nomination with the Dukes of Dixieland several years ago.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that. That's the Dukes of Dixieland.
This was like, I told Matt, I said, man, screw the Grammys, this is, if I could be on The Simpsons, that'd be cool. So it ended up that the whole group was illustrated, I guess, or animated for the last episode. It's Lisa gets the blues, and she ends up in New Orleans.
Yeah, it's the New Orleans Simpson episode.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh,
I've seen
great.
like the food montage on YouTube, but that's
Yeah.
about. I need to see the whole thing.
Yeah, you can
so now I'm
see
gonna
it
be looking for you.
Yeah, you can go on Hulu and check it out and
And
watch it.
you got the hat, the glasses,
The
all
glasses,
of
it's a little different hat, but the glasses and the trumpet, and yeah, it was really.
And so they take your picture, or they.
It's like the whole band,
What's the
and
process?
It's the whole band, and,
Oh, okay.
and we're performing at the Spotted Cat, which incidentally the Nightcrawlers have never played at Spotted Cat. We usually do larger venues, than that, but it's it kind of it was cool, very cool, and so.
Where do y'all normally play?
We normally play like Jazz Fest. It's like a group. It started out as a writer's workshop for different writers. We all wrote tunes and brought them in and rehearsed at the Union Hall. And then we got enough tunes to do a gig, and we did a gig and did an album and then another album. And then, when we do the performances, a lot of people loved it. And it's a great band, but the problem is like almost everybody in the band is band leaders.
Oh, okay.
So
it's
we're all being pulled, like some guys at the time with Harry Connick, and this is pre-Bonorama,
Oh, yeah.
I'm with the Dukes, and
Dukes of Dixieland.
Another guy was off with somebody else, so it's
You're the
it's hard to
band
get
leader for the
together.
Dukes of Dixieland. And if you
Right.
don't know the Dukes of Dixieland, you've never been on the Natchez before.
Yeah,
'cause
we've been
that's
on
like-
there, yeah.
So it's y'all are the jazz band that's
at
on
night. We play there at night,
at night.
just
on
at night for the jazz crews, and we're there almost every night, going into our 25th year.
So that must be like, how do you have time for anything else if you're playing there
Well-
every night, if you're
well,
on
it's-
the Natchez?
Yeah, it's 3 hours. The gig is 3 hours, so it's from 6 to 9.
So you get on, run.
Yeah, and
by
I
the
live
time you get
across
back-
the river from the quarter in Algiers
so
Point, so I can
take
take
the
the ferry.
ferry
If
and
I
get
have
on
a
the-
Vespa, I drive that too and scoot around, So, I just do that. I mean, that's really all I need to do, but I like doing other things too.
Yeah, you've got several different CDs here, and you were telling me all about them, and before I get into like all of that, my thing is with jazz, and I'm a big. I'll leave OZ on the radio pretty much all the time until those sometimes lately some of the DJs, they kind of get a little musy about New Orleans. I'm like,
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about? Like
yeah.
play music, or
Yeah.
I'm here, I can smell the river, and all that. Oh, like,
Yeah,
anyway,
just play. Yeah.
just play some music.
More platter, less chatter. as they
Yeah,
say.
and if you're telling me something about it, that's great. But this whole like poetry about
Yeah.
they get New Orleans gets in your soul, and I'm like,
Yeah,
jeez, I want to listen.
some of the DJs I like more than others,
sure.
but I appreciate the radio stations
Oh, I love the
tremendously,
radio station.
and I know you do. But
yeah, absolutely.
what I like is like at nighttime. It seems like the nighttime DJs have less of an agenda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. Like you play. So you've done a ton of different jazz, and so with the Dukes of Dixieland, the first thing like when I'm thinking about the Dukes of Dixieland, it's Dixieland Jazz. And sometimes when I hear a jazz song, there's jazz, and then like there's I guess like maybe like smooth jazz or something. But like Dixieland Jazz has its own unique sound, and it's kind of like, I guess I don't know. Like I know what Dixieland Jazz is when I hear it.
Yeah. How do you define
How
that?
How do you define? Since you played tons of jazz, you're the band leader of the Dukes of Dixieland. How do you define Dixieland Jazz?
It's simple, but it's complicated at the same time. It's like, how do you define a great meal? Here in New Orleans, like you go to some restaurants and they'll have a coubillon that tastes like amazing, and then you go to another restaurant and it's still coubillon, but it's
different.
It tastes different,
Right.
or jambalaya, or gumbo, whatever you're talking about. So in New Orleans, like really Dixieland is what's called traditional jazz or early jazz.
Early jazz.
So early jazz is like, it stems out of like a lot of hymns and marches and waltzes and ragtime stems out of that, and it's just like improvising over like a more simple chord progression.
Okay.
So instead
I'm not.
Yeah.
Now you're getting
Okay,
right.
so I'll explain
now you're
this
getting
then.
yeah.
So like in blues, you can hear the blues. You go, I love the blues. Everybody goes, I love the blues. So there's like 4 different chords.
Yeah.
In the blues.
You mean like that bass line riff?
Yeah, 3 or 4. Yeah. Ba-do, ba-do, do, right.
Yeah.
So you have like your blues sound, and there's a lot. You can have happy blues and sad blues, and in traditional jazz they play the blues also. But the more jazz chord progressions you have in a song, the more complicated it sounds.
Okay.
Because it's like it's kind of like if you're, I don't know what a good analogy is. It's like we're at State Rock here, like there's a really good ease of flow like to everywhere you go, right around to all the counters. But if you put like a table like in front of your area, the people would have to walk around that. They can still get to your area, but they have to walk around it. So that's like a progression. They have to progress around
that table,
then around another table, around another.
Right.
So it would be like to get to your business, they would have to go through different changes to get to your business instead of like a straight one. Like I think like with traditional jazz and early jazz, there's less tables in the way of getting to your counter.
Okay, all right.
and,
Man, that's okay.
And so it gets kind of confusing. Like that's why people are like, I don't know if I like jazz, And then sometimes when the musicians are playing, like they put like stuff on the table, or another table on top of that table, and extend tables. So it's like there's 3 tables you have to walk around, and they're all stacked up, so it gets kind of complicated. And that's when you really lose people, I think, with jazz music. Like when you break it down to the bare chords and the bare tunes, the basic tunes, and you have those boundaries.
So Dixieland's more it's
more
earlier
simplified,
and it's simplified.
Yeah, so there's not as many chord progressions and changes.
Because I'll have, and speaking of OZ again, like they have like an Avantgarde Jazz show, I think that comes on like Tuesdays or whatever, and my wife can't turn that off fast enough.
I know,
They're
that
like
gets kind of heady, yeah.
Man, they start beating on pots and pans and stuff. So Dixieland would be, I guess, the opposite of that.
That is totally the opposite of that, and and for music,
is that a way to say it?
It's perfect. Like out of all the styles of music, that's probably the one that I have the hardest time wrapping my head around, because there's no structure.
Yeah.
There's no tables. It's like people just there'd be a car in here and a washing machine, or something, and food.
Right.
Of course there's food.
Yeah.
So it'd be like this weird stuff in the way instead of just a table. Like you're expecting a table. But,
it's like a Saturday night art walk on St. Claude, is what you're saying.
Yeah. It's exactly like that. Yeah.
So that's very
You never
interesting. I guess so now you've laid out jazz for me in a line. Now you got Dixieland over here, and you got Avantgarde over here. And so what's the center?
Well, center would be it progressed from early jazz to swing music, like big band kind of sounding stuff, and Lindy Hop stuff,
Okay.
Which like that kind of thing. And then it went from there to more chord progressions, but the same. They take the same song like an early jazz song, but they put a lot of chairs and tables in the way, so it turned into what's called bebop.
Okay.
And so bebop was like a lot of chord progressions over traditional jazz songs, and then from there it would extend to modern jazz, which they would take either old standards and put different melodies over the chord progressions, right? So it would have the same chords as like an old song, but it'd have a different melody. And in music, you can't copyright like a chord progression, but you could copyright the melody.
Oh, okay, okay.
So you'd have different melodies over the same chord progression. Are you following me?
I'm following you.
Yeah. So you go from swing to bebop and then modern jazz.
Yeah.
So that's the jazz. And coming out of that, like you have the blues that's always been. It's like
another.
Yeah.
It's another thing. It's like it's like Bitcoin Cash. Are you familiar with the Bitcoin and that?
Yeah. It's just following
blues
along.
I know I lost a lot of people with the Bitcoin
That's
Cash
all right. They can
analogy.
look it up.
Yeah, you Google it.
So the blues, it's followed this on, and blues is like where rock and roll, I think, came out of.
Yeah, sure.
And so you have that whole blues and rock and roll, and then with the advent of rap, it's kind of interesting because there's not a lot of chord progressions. Like there's like maybe like no tables between the front door and your counter. It's all just it's more of a stream of consciousness thing to me, and it's really bass, and I think that's why a lot of people like it, because there's like hardly any chords. But in early funk music, there's not a lot of chords either.
Yeah.
Like one chord,
Well, because when I listen to some like early funk, I do like, wow, this is like basically rap essentially.
Yeah.
Or a genre I like to call party rap, which is totally me and not.
Yeah. So what's a band that you consider party rap?
Something like Wyclef Jean, something that's very pop, very top 40 rap. Something that would be that I call it
like the Vanilla Ice thing.
Sure, something like that. Yeah. Really.
Or early Beastie Boys.
Beastie Boys, yeah. And even Beastie Boys likes to get a little bit more complicated than I say, or like a 50 Cent. You know what I mean? Somebody like him would be very I call it party rap.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I guess that's. But when I hear some of the early funk stuff, it certainly reminds me of that.
Right. And there's this whole rap, the bounce,
I don't know anything
the
about
bounce
music.
thing coming out of
Yeah, bounce.
And I think also you were talking about Dixieland Jazz and early. I think Dixieland Jazz it's got it's not bounce like what we like Big Frito or something like that.
Yeah,
it's got a bounce to it. Like the vibe to it is like.
Oh, it's got a rhythm.
Yeah, it's got a certain lift to it. And
that's a great way to. That's a good. Dixieland Jazz to me always has that happy rhythmic.
Yeah.
Was rhythmic a word? I'm not sure.
It is now. Yeah. And I'm going to use it from now.
Rhythmic. It's got that. It's got a nice happy up. Yeah. I know what you're saying.
Like an upbeat, bouncy kind of vibe to it. Yeah. And there's bands that play, and I mean you wouldn't do that maybe on a slow blues like St. James Infirmary or something like that.
Yeah.
But on a medium tempo or up tempo tune,
Now, would you say? See, I wouldn't put St. James Infirmary in the Dixieland.
Yeah.
Realm.
Well, there's a whole
in my
blues,
brain.
Yeah. I mean, the Dukes, we have a whole blues album, like a two album set, because there's all kinds of blues, like St. James Infirmary, the Tin Roof Blues. You probably recognize that one if you heard it. St. Louis Blues is another one you'd recognize if you heard it. Yeah, I could go on and on. Buddy Bolden blues. Buddy Bolden wrote a lot of blues. All of Jelly Roll.
Yeah.
Jelly Roll wrote Buddy Bolden blues, but
Yeah. And this
like-
is like proto. This is proto. I mean, it's blues, but it's proto blues. You're getting into Dixieland, and
yeah, I
would
mean,
you say that?
yeah. And sometimes when I'm playing the blues with any of the bands I play with, you would think it's a blues band almost.
Yeah.
You know, so except for the instrumentation, it might be a little different. Like with the Dukes, we use a lot of saxophone now, and also clarinet, but and some flute. You know, we have a new musician, Owen Callahan, that plays with us that doubles on a lot of different instruments. And so the direction of the band is to try to get more versatile and do like the New Orleans rhythm and blues stuff, and also the early jazz. So when you come on the boat on the Natchez, it's like it's not just traditional jazz and early jazz that you're going to hear with the Dukes. Because we've been at it like every night for 25 years. You know, you get like, okay, let's do some Professor Longhair, let's do some James Booker, you know,
Yeah.
and or do some original tunes and. Or Dr. John. So we do all that.
Well, I'm going to come see you soon at Natchez because it's one of the things that we have a 3-year-old son,
Oh, yeah.
and we haven't taken him on the
Right,
Natchez
and there's
yet.
not a
He's
lot of
gonna love it.
places that you could take, you know, your kids to hear music. you
Yeah,
know?
it's
You know, you got
definitely.
the Natchez. I think Buffo's, you could take your kids to
Yeah.
Buffo's. Sometimes they have stuff at like the, you know, at the museum.
Yeah, the mint and stuff.
Yeah,
But
fortunately we have festivals like, you know,
Oh
right in the
yeah,
middle
we'll
of
take him
Jazz
to Jazz
Fest. Yeah.
Fest. I mean, we'll take him to not Jazz Fest, but French Quarter Fest.
Quarter
and
Fest
that.
is good, yeah.
But he'll love to because you got the boat. Now.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
he probably will
Yeah,
be
if he gets bored, you know,
listening
music.
to traditional jazz.
Yeah, which probably he won't. I mean,
I don't know.
He'll be enamored.
He's definitely he loves he will because we used to do they used to do some live music here at St. Rod Market, and when he was little, man, he would just sit there and watch that band the whole time. You had to drag him away.
yeah.
you know?
So I mean, we see kids like that all the time
Oh,
on
I'll
the
bet.
riverboat.
I bet. You know, when
They're
you see that.
really attentive, you know.
Okay, I've never, and I must say that is probably this past couple of minutes here. That's one of the most interesting things I've ever done on this show.
Oh wow!
Because I've just
Good.
never heard. Yeah, this is jazz. This is jazz. This is jazz. That was a cool breakdown of like Jazz 101. And
good.
jazz
I'm
people
glad
may
to-
know that, and I'm listening to jazz all the time, but I've never. Now I'm going to be like when I'm listening to jazz, I'm going to be putting it on that thing.
Yeah, you'll be able to really decide why you don't like it.
I wouldn't say that,
be
but
able to
that's hilarious.
explain it.
I'll be able to explain it better. Yes, I don't like
Yeah,
this.
yeah, that's got too many chords.
That's got too many
progressions.
tables in the way to the coffee shop, you know. And so but let's talk. So we talk about the Dukes of Dixieland, of course, the new Simpsons deal. But look, you got a couple of new albums out, and you want to run through these real quick with me? The big. This is your newest album.
Yeah,
Big
that's
Small?
a bird dog small band. This is kind of a funny name. The reason we call it a bird dog is because, like, you know, when you like say you're out hunting, which I don't do, but you're hunting and you shoot a bird, then you have a dog that runs out and get it.
Right.
You know, but your whole focus is to, like, you know, get the bird, right?
Right.
So when we're playing a brunch, we do a brunch with the Joe Simon Trio. That's the name of the band, the Joe Simon Trio. And we're over at Tableau, right, in Jackson Square.
Uh-huh.
And so we stroll tables with this trio. And we get the strangest requests. Like yesterday I was strolling and, you know, we get people that they want to hear Freebird and then they expect us not to play it. But
They've
then we
had too
play
many
it.
bottomless mimosas
yeah,
and
right,
could be like,
Yeah.
Freebird!
Yeah, so we did, like yesterday we did Free Falling. Speaking of free, we did Free Falling.
Uh-huh.
We did Free Bird.
Oh yeah, you got like Billie Jean with a little help from
Yeah,
our
we
friends,
do all these
Batman, Ring of Fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do
Enter
Toto's Africa.
Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Yeah, we do Nirvana.
That's-
Metallica's a Metallica tune.
yeah.
There's a Duke Ellington tune that's interesting. My son's a rapper. He just turned 17 and he writes. He's doing his own album right now, producing it. And his
Wow.
name's Theory 504.
Theory.
and he's a badass rapper. And he really is a badass, and he writes his own lyrics. And he's been doing it probably since he was 12. So I was doing a Duke Ellington tune on here called Solitude, which is a really mellow thing. We had a drummer on this, Tom Shoot is on this, and we added him and to do loops, so we have the loops going on under a Duke Ellington tune, and then Keller, also known as 3504, sang Solitude, the Duke Ellington tune. He sings it, and then he does a rap that he wrote himself about how, love lost and all that stuff. He's experienced some love loss, of course.
Yeah.
So it's really great. And so other than that track, everything else is kind of
Traditional.
different.
Different traditional jazz. Can I say that?
Yeah. But these are all like very accessible. I mean, you probably recognize every song.
Oh yeah, just about.
Unless I don't
Easy
know, you may
like
be too
Sunday.
young for maybe.
Yeah, what's Sanford and Son?
That's a theme from the TV.
From the
show
TV. Oh
Sanford.
yeah. Okay, I know the show. But yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought of,
Yeah.
but I didn't. Yeah.
Blackbird. I did
Blackbird.
a Future tune, Mask Off.
Mask Off?
You
No,
know that? He's a rapper, Future. So we did like a jazzy
version of that. That's.
Which is kind of.
I would like to hear that.
Elton John, Rocket Man. Yeah, so it's this very
I would like to
accessible
hear that. Yeah.
album, and it's twisted, and it's just ridiculous. So that's that.
Where you from?
I'm from Orlando, Florida.
Okay, so
Florida.
how did you get? How did this jazz music seep into your soul?
Let's see.
Because there was two questions. It was, where are you from? And if it was from here, I would have asked you where you went to high school.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But this is my coffee with Kevin. Like I've got the. This is the path. But how did this? Because like I had a girl that does like cemetery restorations. That was from Florida.
Oh, wow.
It's like, okay, well you're from Florida and now you're doing cemetery. How did you make
Right,
that?
right, yeah.
Like to New Orleans.
That's
New Orleans
very
cemeteries.
interesting. I'll have to
how
see
did
that one.
How did you? That's a good episode too.
Yeah.
It's really good. How did you make that jazz from Orlando into New Orleans? How did that seep into
Let's
your?
see. The short version.
Yeah, the short version, because we're running out of time.
Yeah, I was a jazz trumpet player in Orlando at Walt Disney World. I was in the Walt Disney Band during the day, and then at night I had my own band that played at Pleasure Island called Frankie and the East Side Boys. That was a whole life ago. And I was playing in the Walt Disney Band, and there was a venue at night called Rosie O'Grady's, and it was called Rosie O'Grady's Good Time Emporium, and it was like roaring 20s, traditional jazz, early jazz. And a lot of guys that I worked with at Walt Disney World played in that band, and then there's also Dixieland and early jazz bands at Disney World, because it's Americana and everything. It's like American art form.
Yeah.
So I started to learn the songs when I was at Walt Disney World, and I was a huge fan of the Dukes of Dixieland anyway. And a friend of mine was a trumpet player in the band. His name was J.B. Scott at the time. And I told him, I said, if you ever leave that band, let me know, because I'd love to move to New Orleans and play in the Dukes of Dixieland. So that's how it happened. He decided to leave, and he called me. He says, are you interested? I go, yeah. So I learned a lot of the tunes for the band and came up on audition and got the gig and moved here. So that's how that all worked.
And you've been here you've been bouncing around, but here
I've been here. Yeah, I met my wife Megan. On the riverboat. She was down taking a riverboat cruise, and we hung out for a week.
Ain't that awesome?
Yeah, and then I ended up moving to Toronto for a while.
Did you do a lot of that? Because I had a guy who used to, an old guy, my carpenter guy, people know him because he's around the market. I won't call him out on the thing.
Come on.
Eddie Conti. I guess
good.
Yeah, he's a crazy old carpenter. And he used to, in the 70s, he would sling drinks on the Natchez.
Oh,
and he would tell me all the stories about the tourist women he would
that's like
serve.
Well, that's like a different thing, Like the golf centers, you're more accessible.
Yeah, that's true. You're behind that.
We'd have to like source out ourselves. I got a funny photo of me and Tim Laughlin was on the band, great jazz clarinetist here in New Orleans. And Tim and I decided to meet these three girls that were from Canada. So what he did is he asked if he could take their picture, because they were trying to get their picture taken. He says, I'll take your picture. And so then I walked up and he took their picture. And it's funny because I have that photo now of Megan and her two friends before we even met.
That is kind of cool. Yeah. That is fun. Before I let you go, there's one thing I should have said in the beginning of the show. This is the very first time on Coffee with Kevin that I've had coffee with Kevin.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
the
Kevin, yes.
I said I want to do it. So we're both Kevin. That's the joke.
All right, before we go though, let me just touch on these two real
touch
quick.
on those two. Yeah, sure.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
So this album is with Tom McDermott. A lot of people in New Orleans know of Tom. He's from St. Louis, but he's been here a long time.
Oh yeah, I know
We're
Tom.
good buddies, and we did this duo album. It's early jazz, all early jazz.
Okay, that's
cornet
interesting.
And piano. And this album is called The Awakening of Calm. This is a free download.
Oh, okay.
And it's like a spiritual enlightenment thing. And
I can tell by the eye.
Yeah, I know.
It's very Masonish.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's Masonic.
Yeah, it has that.
The Awakening
There's
of Calm.
a lot of tie-ins with a lot of enlightenment albums, but the name of the album is The Awakening of Calm. You can go to awakeningofcalm.com.
Okay.
C-O-M, and you can download
Calm.
this.
Yeah, I'm going to try to say that with my Yad accent. I'm never going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Awakeningofcalm.com. It's a calm. Yeah, you're right.
Megan's reading on this. It's original tunes for piano. Matt Limler is performing on it. Great piano player here in New Orleans. And then I took excerpts from Walt Whitman, Cahill Chopin, Rumi, Emily Dickinson, and have different people. Sarah Quintana's reading Psalm in French. Megan's on it, and a friend of mine, Tex Brashear, he's a voiceover actor in LA. He has his own studio, and he's big time, and he does a lot of movie soundtracks, and so he decided that he would like to be involved. So he's reading Walt Whitman on here. So it's very fun, and it's a free download.
Cool.
Awakening of Calm.
Well, what I'll do is I'll post all of email me some links, and when I post the episode, I'll have all the links down in the thing below.
Perfect.
So you can see all the links, and we're going to come over and see you on the Natchez soon.
Anytime, Kevin.
Thanks so much. It was very informative. I really appreciate it. I think everybody's going to love it. Thank you much. Take care.